Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the next episode of Ecommerce Insights. I'm your host, Scott DeGrossier, coming to you live from Gary Island in beautiful Marblehead, Massachusetts. Thanks for joining. Today we're going to talk about a couple topics that, fortunately or not, are things that you need to worry about as an e-commerce owner. Tracking pixels, tracking cookies, and the difference between third and first party data. Riveting topics, important topics. Whether they're riveting or not, you need to know about them because your data is being used, sometimes used against you, sometimes for you. Ways you are used to determining things are relying on technologies that are only going to work in certain specific situations and aren't going to work in others. And if nothing else, you get to look at my spectacular hairstyle right now here. The wind is just crushing me. Thank God for this fancy mic. That's blocking out the wind kind of nicely. So hold on here. Yeah, that ain't working either, is it? Oh well. Too late now, we're live. So the Apple versus Facebook news, which it was quite newsworthy, about IDFA, and Apple's new release was going to block IDFA, and that's a lot of acronyms, and then everyone has their interpretations of what that might mean. But if you want to understand that, which if you're listening to this, you're going to at least hear about it, so I hope you do, it comes down to first party data versus third party data. First party data is data collected to be used by the party collecting it. That's first party. For example, your Shopify data, your WooCommerce data, your Klaviyo data, your HubSpot data, the stuff that you collect because people are on your website doing stuff, that's first-party data. That's yours to, optimize your business with. Third-party data is when data is collected and used for other purposes not related to the party collecting it, or collected on behalf of people and used for other nefarious or not purposes. And so ad platforms generally are using third-party data because they are there and then they're looking around at what you visit the site. They say, hey, thanks for visiting. I'm going to attach to your computer. And then they sniff around and watch you do other things. And then so this cookie that came on, or tracking pixel, or all the different technology, whatever tech it is, if it's watching you cruise around to other websites and the web, and every time you log in, you may or may not have known that, but it's happening. And then it's used for whatever purpose they want. That's third-party data. First-party data is when you're collecting data about people that you've earned their visit to come to your website and hopefully opt in and eventually buy your stuff. And almost fell over here on the rocks on the cliffs here. That would have been interesting. And so you're trying to use it to make your business better, and you're collecting it, and it's somewhat consensual. They've come to your site of their own volition. And they like, at least they're on your website because they have some reason or interest to be there. So it's a very different initial capture intent to the data, which matters heavily and is going to matter much, much more in the future. So what was going on was that Facebook was grabbing the Apple phone ID. So Apple's not, innocent of this. Apple was saying, hey, grab a phone ID. It's like a social security number, here it is, here's what we know. And so they finally put an end to that. And a lot of people were relying on that. Now, that capturing that data, it does give you more data. But the tricky thing about tracking and marketing attribution is more data isn't always better data. And if anything, it can further cloud the key parts of a customer journey that turn them into a repeat valuable customer, hopefully in the future. You want the right data acted on correctly. And that can be challenging to do. And sometimes getting every single impression out there it's not the way to go. But furthermore, those methods are going to be illegal someday. So that's going to be, if anything, that's going to make data actually more accurate the law, what Apple and Facebook are, battling over. It's going to make it more accurate data because instead of it being sniffed by a phone ID, you're going to have to it's going to be more earned media where they actually clicked and went to your site is where you're going to be able to track, because once something becomes in the first party domain, then you can track and use it. And if you're relying on stealth hidden stuff, that's slowly but surely going to no longer be allowed, which is a good thing. Because then if the data is relied on more accurate actions, such as clicks, rather than impressions, you're going to have more accurate data in your, hopefully, Facebook and Google platforms. We'll see. It's not no, I can't really worry about that. I got my own marketing attribution concerns to worry about. So that first party, third party thing is becoming a big thing where first party data cookies are something that's going to become important. You're going to have to make sure that whatever you're doing is correctly labeled and passes all the tests that it's a first party data use only cookie for it to be able to be used. At my company, Wicked Reports, for marketing attribution, we've always been a first party data cookie company. We use things in addition to cookies that are also first party data, fall into that domain, because you can't just rely on cookies because they're going to drop when you go from domain to domain in a particular marketing funnel. So let's talk about cookies for a minute here. So cookies and tracking pixels. A pixel is, a 1 by 1 pixel is the smallest image that is, theoretically possible in a website or a graphic on the web. And so the idea behind a tracking pixel is that you have a 1 by 1 image, and then there's code in that image that's going to report on what you're doing. And that's the standard way that people track if an email is opened or not. Is because if you allow images on your email, the image opens and it reports back, hey, Scott at Wicked Reports just opened this email or whatever. That's one way that it can happen. And then a cookie is a text file that gets put on your computer when you visit it, and you put various things there, and then you can retrieve that information and again, figure out what's going on. You're constantly, like when they're clicking around websites, you're adding stuff to that flat file, text file, and then you're pulling it out so that you can, track them. Or there's a lot of good reasons for cookies. They personalize websites. They say, hey, this person's okay. They logged in. It's safe. There's a lot of technologies built on cookies that, it's going to be really tough if they get rid of cookies. A lot of texts are going to have to get rethought, or they're just not going to work very well. And one of those ways is tracking. And again, that's a third first party thing. Advertisers, places will cookie your website and then keep track of where you go and then pull that out. We don't do that at Wicked Reports. We just use the cookie for what you're doing on our client's site and when you're doing it. Now, an issue with cookies is if you have a domain, if you have a marketing funnel that has multiple domains in it, which many people do. You could go to your website and then you could kick over to your checkout system, which is hosted on a different site. And then right away, you can lose the trail if you rely only on cookies. No tracking system should rely on cookies alone, or you're going to fail because of that funnel won't work. Or it could be because you're on your unbounce page or your lead pages, or you hosted your blog on a separate domain. There's a lot of reasons why people have multiple domains in their funnel. Or you're on this podcast. If we host this podcast on a separate domain, then you click to Wicked Reports, then you click to our checkout system. Like, we need to be able to track that to say, they came from the podcast website and made the sale. And we can't do that if we rely strictly on cookies. The easiest way to see if the tracking cookie problem is Google Analytics. You go in there, and if you see in referring websites and you see your own website, which everyone does, and it's just maddening, right? That's because it relies on cookies. It's Google. They probably, ideally, they have some other ways around that, right? But you see the referring website be a different domain, and you're like, geez, it's me. It's still my stuff. Well, you can go in and fix that in the settings. That's not the purpose of this episode, but the thing that I am most concerned with in terms of tracking and it's in a little known, I don't know how popular or well known it is that Apple has a 7-day cookie expiration now on the Safari browser. So if you're using your default browser in your iPhone or you're on a Mac using Safari, the cookie only lasts 7 days. This is fine for most types of tracking, but where this gets tricky is anyone that doesn't update their technology for first click. Because first click is a measurement used to track top of the funnel initial brand awareness. Now, a lot of people like to say, hey, I'll just use first click and last click and then I'm going to be rich. You still need to capture the point in the middle that made them a lead. Don't want to digress too much here from the cookie, that you're missing the second most important conversion if you do that, which is the lead conversion. But the first click isn't very important because it's saying, hey, someone was walking around minding their own business and now I did something in marketing that made them finally become aware of me. What the hell was that? Well, it's the first click. And so one very common way of tracking first click is to cookie the machine when a click comes in. And then when you finally become aware of who that person is, you go grab the cookie and say, oh, look, they came here 3 months ago or whatever. We have a couple ways we track first click over at Wicked Reports. That's one of them. And we had someone the other day that closed. They were first aware of us January 2019, 20-month close. So, I mean, that first click was cool to see. Doesn't mean I'm going to go rush and go spend more money on that top of the funnel. I mean, I need leads to close faster than 20 months, right? But it was still cool that we did it. I still thought it was fun. But here's the risk of your accuracy for your tracking data. So I'm on my phone. I see your ad. Let me walk you through an example. I'll use a client of ours, Primal Harvest. Cool, gorgeous website. Sells, all kinds of primal meats and foods and things like that. Now, let's say I'm on my iPhone. I've never heard of them. They're running an ad on Facebook for cold traffic. Hopefully they've excluded their email list like good marketers, so they're only running it to actual cold traffic. And I see an ad. It's like some, click here, save 20% on, deer beef jerky, whatever. And I click on it. Lo and behold, I get distracted by something. Put my phone down, leave it. Don't do anything. That's my first click. Let's call it deer jerky. Don't know why I thought of that. I wonder if they sell it. So deer jerky is my first click. Now, I did that with the iPhone. So if they're using tracking cookies, as most people would be doing, they have 7 days to retrieve that and figure it out. The trouble is, if I'm not identified, if I have no other way to identify who I was, like the trail gets lost. So let's just, for all intents and purposes, say 8 days goes by. I see another ad for buffalo meat. Oh, buffalo meat's great. I click on it. I don't do anything. So now buffalo meat has been, because 8 days have gone by, Apple's deleted the cookie. Now the buffalo meat is now in there as the first click. Then 4 days later, they're retargeting the hell out of me. And I'm like, ooh, if they say buy one, get one grass-fed chicken. I'm like, oh man, I got to have this. Put in my email, still don't buy. Well, at that point, because it's within a week, they can pluck the cookie out and say, oh, look, the first click was buffalo meat. Okay, so buffalo meat was the first click. Grass-fed chicken's what made the lead. But the real first click was the deer jerky. And you lose that because the cookie's been deleted. Now, why would you care? Who cares? Just take whatever data we get. Well, what happens is when they go to scale and they have this first click data that says, oh, the buffalo meat, look at it, brought Scott in as a lead and he ended up buying like tons of meat. He bought $2,000 worth of primal meat shipped to his house. He's a great customer. We want tons. And you aggregate all these journeys. So they aggregate them all up. And if all of a sudden the two things could happen. Well, it could show that, hey, the buffalo meat ad has got a ton of first clicks. It's great. Let's start spending more money there. And then you spend more there and the return doesn't match. The spend goes up, return flattens out because it's not really the first click. And it doesn't really work on cold. I wasn't a cold audience. I wasn't cold traffic. I was cold traffic when I saw the original ad, not the buffalo meat ad. So the shown on cold traffic, it might not work that well. It's an ad that works better once you've already been exposed to the brand a few times, 5, 10 times, who knows how many. And on the flip side, where they should be putting the money on the deer jerky ad, they're not, because we didn't even know the click happened. It's like, man, this one was a dud. Man, I really thought this deer jerky ad was going to be great. Oh, well, the buffalo one's the one working. Geez, I spent there. Now it didn't work. Oh. And then you're back to the drawing board when really you just needed accurate data that showed you that it was the deer jerky that got the first clicks in to begin with. So that is the current risk of now with Apple's iPhones deleting those cookies every 7 days. If you don't have a way to capture that and tie it together and stitch together the journey, you're going to be having faulty top of the funnel data. This is why I strongly recommend that you're doing e-commerce lead capture at the top of the funnel, excluding your email list and figuring out what attracts cold traffic to become a new lead. Because that's a tough thing to do, to find the right cold traffic new lead sources that become high value customers. But when you find it, it's absolute gold, and it's a huge edge because most other people are relying on first click, or they're not even doing that. They're just worried about bottom of the funnel. And yet if you can see, hey, what ads to people that have never heard about me are making them willing to opt in for the offer to give me their email, it's very different than some customer that's on your list and has already bought from you, or someone that's been around and loitering on your list as a dead lead for 8 months. Very different. And normally it looks negative initially. And so this 7-day cookie Apple iPhone deletion thing means that I think you should be shifting to new lead capture, even as an e-commerce business. There's tons of reasons why. This is just another one. Related to tracking technology, the risk of relying on first click over new lead is that unless your attribution company takes care to really make sure it's the first click, you could waste money. I mean, no one's got money to waste, right? The other big thing happening with this app, with this Facebook third-party tracking pixel being in trouble, is Facebook's had to shift to something called a Conversions API, formerly known as server to server. And Wicked reports we were the second company in the world whitelisted to do this technology. We still haven't implemented it yet for reasons that I'm under NDA, so I can't talk about, but it's just not the right thing to do right now. Let's put it that way. That's all I can really say. The idea is Facebook wants you to take your first party data, like from Shopify or from Klaviyo, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, and send it up to them so that they can then say, oh, look, here are all your sales. And then they'll decide what ad made the sale. Now, this is a tricky situation as an e-commerce advertiser because you want Facebook to have data so it can work, but that data, technically they're going to use it for whatever they want, which is probably going to help your competitors targeting people in your space as well. That's kind of how the game works. Like they're gonna, oh wow, these are really high value. These people have spent $5,000 with Primal Harvest, and I'm at primalcompetitor.com. And I'm looking for people. I'm a new advertiser on Facebook. I want to spend money here. Help me find someone, algorithm. Oh, look, you're in Primal. Oh, well, we know all these people that are spending 10 grand a year with this company. Why don't we show you their ad? So it's a risky proposition. On the flip side, the algorithm will they've already got lookalikes going, but they'll really be able to dial in your lookalikes because they'll know precisely how much everyone's worth. So in theory, they'll be able to mirror and match better. A concern I have is that the Facebook data, it doesn't look at other channels, nor should it. It's Facebook. What do they care? Why are they going to tell you to go spend money somewhere else? They're not. That's not their job. But the more data they have when it comes to reporting and for accuracy, I just feel like the data's off a lot right now. And sending them more data and then trying to make, if you can't transparently see, I sent you these 5 orders, tell me what you attributed these 5 orders to, which they don't. They mask who they attribute it to. So you don't ever see where you gave them the data. You don't get to see where it gets attributed or why. And so it just can cloud your data because you'll be like, hey, I sent you 5 orders today and I'm looking around trying to figure out where they are, and they may or may not add up to 5 because they're looking forward optimistically 28 days to attribute your data. And so slowly but surely, the gap between what you sent them and trying to piece together what the conversions are gets wider and wider. And I'm not looking to be responsible for explaining that. I'm looking to try to be a source of truth for your marketing. So I'm steering clear of that one for now until I can get some more accountability built in from them on how we can back up their numbers if we're going to send them your data with your permission. So that's my fear on that one. But that's why Facebook's making that move, because the pixel is eventually not going to be allowed to track the way it tracks. And so they're going after the source data, which it makes sense for them to do that. It's just it's an interesting proposition for you to consider whether you're going to sign on for that or not. Early adopters are likely to do really well. And then, but then we'll see, we'll see how that data is used for and against you. I mean, they're already doing that now. Is it more risky with better data? I don't know. That's the $1 million question for you to answer. I'm not going to answer that because I don't know the answer on that one. So can't be a source of truth and then make up opinions if I don't really have a strong one as to what the right decision is. That's not what I'm looking to do here. So this privacy stuff, if you hung in there, this is the world we live in now. And I hope this has helped make some sense of it. And if you'd like to hear more on this topic, let me know, because I could talk a lot more on it. I mean, this is our business and livelihood. But I didn't want to freak you out with too much techno babble. So I'm going to stop now. Thanks for listening.